She looked at him and said, "What were you staring at, my fall, or the chance to drive away?" That morning, Ethan Carter had 17 minutes to save his future and 1 second to decide who he really was. Before we begin, tell us in the comments, have you ever faced a moment where helping someone meant risking everything? And where are you watching from? Don't forget to like and subscribe for more real emotional stories. Let's begin. Chicago glittered under a sharp winter sun the morning Ethan Carter decided that hope was a dangerous thing. He had pressed his only navy suit the night before while Lily sat at the kitchen table coloring a picture of the two of them in front of a tall glass building. She had written, in uneven pink letters, "My dad works here." Ethan hadn't corrected her. Not yet. Novaris Consulting. After months of contract gigs, rejected applications, and watching his savings shrink, this interview felt like oxygen. A stable salary, health insurance, something solid he could build a future on for his 6-year-old daughter. "Will you get the job?" Lily had asked, eyes wide. "I'm going to try my best," he'd answered, because promises were luxuries he no longer made. The traffic downtown was thick, but moving. Ethan kept one eye on the clock glowing on his dashboard. 8:36 a.m. Interview at 9 o'clock. He had planned everything carefully, left early, mapped the fastest route, even rehearsed answers at red lights. That was when he saw her. At a busy intersection, pedestrians surged forward with the green signal. A woman in a sharp red blazer stepped confidently into the crosswalk, then faltered. Her heel caught on uneven pavement. Her body twisted. She fell hard against the asphalt. The sound, sharp, human, cut through the noise of engines and horns. Cars hesitated. Then someone honked impatiently. Ethan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. He could drive around. Someone else would stop. There were dozens of witnesses. His eyes flicked to the clock. 8:41. He exhaled once, then put the car in park. By the time he reached her, papers had scattered across the street. A leather briefcase lay open. Blood traced a thin line from her temple. Her ankle was swelling fast. "Don't try to stand," Ethan said, kneeling beside her. His voice shifted instinctively, calm, grounded. The way he used to sound before life taught him how fragile stability could be. "I can't be late," she whispered through clenched teeth. "I have to get to Novaris." The word hit him like a physical thing. "That's where I'm going," he replied. Her eyes searched his face, assessing, intelligent despite the pain. "Board meeting," she said. "Critical." Ethan looked at the traffic building behind his car. A driver shouted something about blocking the lane. He looked at his watch again. 8:44, 17 minutes could cost him everything. But leaving her here would cost him something else. He thought of Lily at breakfast, swinging her legs under the chair, trusting that her father knew how to choose right from wrong, trusting that grown-ups were brave. "Okay," Ethan said quietly. "I'll get you there." He helped her into his car, careful with her injured ankle. She tried to maintain composure, but pain flickered across her face like lightning. "I'm Madeline," she said, forcing steadiness into her tone. "Madeline Harper." Ethan nodded, pulling back into traffic. Ethan Carter. He didn't recognize the name. Not yet. As the glass tower of Novaris rose into view, sunlight blazing against its surface, Ethan felt the weight of what he had just done. For the first time in months, his future had been within reach, and he had willingly stepped away from it. What he didn't know was that the choice he made at that intersection would not cost him his future. It would define it. The Novaris Tower rose like a blade of glass against the winter sky. Ethan pulled into the circular drive, heart pounding louder than the city noise. He jumped out first, hurrying to help Madeline from the passenger seat. Up close, he could see the swelling in her ankle had worsened, but she held herself with controlled authority, as if pain were an inconvenience she refused to acknowledge. Inside the lobby, everything gleamed. Marble floors, brushed steel, quiet efficiency. A security guard looked up. His expression changed instantly. "Miss Harper." Ethan froze. "Miss Harper." The name snapped into place in his mind. The website photo. The leadership profile he had memorized the night before while Lily slept on the couch beside him. Madeline Harper, CEO of Novaris Consulting. She gave the guard a tight nod. "I slipped. I'll handle it. Clear the elevator." The guard didn't argue. Ethan helped her inside. The doors closed, sealing them in mirrored silence. His reflection looked disheveled, hair wind-tossed, sleeves streaked with dirt from the asphalt. "You should get that cleaned," Madeline said, noticing his cuff. It's fine, Ethan replied automatically. The elevator stopped at the executive floor. As the doors opened, assistants moved with sudden urgency. Madeline turned slightly toward him. Thank you, she said, and for the first time her voice softened. You should go to your interview. He almost laughed at the irony. I will, he said. 17 minutes late. By the time Ethan reached the reception desk for candidates, his pulse was racing. The assistant gave him a polite but strained smile. Name: Ethan Carter. 9 o'clock. Her fingers paused over the keyboard. Mr. Carter, you were scheduled at 9 sharp. I know. There was an emergency. A tall man in a charcoal suit stepped out from a conference room. His gaze swept over Ethan with cool assessment. Mr. Carter? The man asked. Yes, sir. I'm Charles Whitmore. He didn't offer a handshake. Punctuality is a basic expectation here. We've already begun discussions with the next candidate. Ethan felt the floor tilt beneath him. I understand, he said quietly. But someone was injured. I couldn't just leave. Whitmore's expression didn't change. Business requires discipline. If you cannot prioritize properly, you may struggle here. The words were measured, clinical, and final. Ethan swallowed. He pictured Lily's drawing. My dad works here. I'm sorry for the inconvenience, he said, because pride didn't pay rent. He turned slightly, preparing to leave. Then the executive elevator doors opened behind him. The room shifted. Madeline Harper stepped out, her ankle now wrapped, posture steady despite the limp. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Even Whitmore straightened. Charles, she said evenly, why is Mr. Carter not in the conference room? Whitmore blinked once. He arrived late. Madeline's eyes moved to Ethan. Recognition flared, not dramatic, but deliberate. He was late, she said calmly, because he was assisting me. A ripple passed through the room. Whitmore's jaw tightened. Even so, Madeline, procedures. Procedures, she interrupted, exist to serve people, not the other way around. Silence fell, thick and charged. Madeline looked back at Ethan. Join us. Whitmore hesitated. You're setting a precedent. Yes, Madeline replied softly. I am. Ethan followed them down the hallway, aware of every step, every glance. He had expected to lose everything this morning. Instead, he was walking into a room that felt less like an interview and more like a test. The executive conference room overlooked the frozen curve of the Chicago River. Sunlight poured through the glass walls, too bright for how tense the air felt inside. Ethan sat at the far end of a long walnut table. Across from him were 3 people who could alter the direction of his life with a single sentence. Madeline Harper sat at the head, composed, controlled. Her injured ankle was discreetly elevated, but nothing about her posture suggested weakness. To her right sat Patricia Reynolds, the COO, quiet, observant, eyes sharp with calculation. To her left sat Charles Whitmore. Whitmore folded his hands neatly. Let's be efficient. Mr. Carter, why should Novaris hire someone who demonstrates poor time management? Ethan met his gaze. His pulse hammered, but his voice stayed steady. I don't demonstrate poor time management, he said. I demonstrate priorities. Whitmore's eyebrow lifted slightly. Madeline watched without interruption. You were aware you'd miss your interview, Whitmore pressed. Yes. And you chose to stop anyway. Yes. Whitmore leaned back. That suggests impulsiveness. Ethan shook his head once. It suggests accountability. There was a person bleeding in the street. I made a decision I could live with. Silence settled heavily across the table. Patricia spoke for the first time. You're a single father? Yes. Age of your daughter? 6. Lily. Madeline's fingers stilled against the table. Patricia nodded slowly. You understood helping Ms. Harper could cost you this opportunity. Yes. And you did it anyway. Ethan hesitated only a second. If I'd driven away, I might have gained a job. But I would have lost something I can't explain to my daughter. I don't want her growing up believing success means stepping over someone who needs help. Whitmore's tone sharpened. This is a consulting firm, not a charity. We handle multi-million-dollar negotiations. Discipline matters. Integrity matters more, Ethan replied quietly. Whitmore's jaw tightened. Madeline finally leaned forward. Mr. Carter, she said, her voice no longer distancio, but something more personal. Have you ever paid a price for doing the right thing? Ethan's throat tightened. Yes. He didn't plan to explain, but the room demanded honesty. At my previous company, I reported falsified compliance documents. The supervisor was dismissed. After that, contracts stopped coming my way. I was labeled difficult. My marriage was already strained. It didn't survive the fallout. Whitmore's eyes flickered, just for a second. Patricia noticed. Madeline didn't look away from Ethan. And knowing that history, she asked softly, "You still chose to stop today?" "Yes." Another silence. Not skeptical this time, evaluating. Patricia turned to Madeline. "Character under pressure is difficult to teach." Whitmore exhaled sharply. "Character doesn't close deals." Madeline's gaze shifted to him. "Actually, Charles, it does. It determines which deals we're willing to close." The tension between them was no longer subtle. Ethan felt it then. This wasn't just about him. There was something larger unfolding beneath the surface. Madeline looked back at him. "You're aware," she said evenly, "that accepting a position here means scrutiny. Your past will be reviewed. Your decision today will be discussed." "I assumed it would," Ethan answered. "And you're comfortable with that?" He thought of Lily again, her drawing, her trust. "I'm comfortable knowing I didn't look away." Madeline held his gaze for a long moment. Then she said, calmly and without hesitation, "I'm offering you the position, Mr. Carter." Whitmore's chair creaked as he shifted. "Madeline," he warned. She didn't blink. "Integrity is not a liability. It's leverage." Ethan felt the weight of the moment settle over him. He had arrived 17 minutes late. And somehow, that lateness had just changed everything. Ethan's first week at Novaris felt less like onboarding and more like entering a battlefield in a tailored suit. The official announcement described him as a strategic hire with strong ethical leadership values. The phrasing sounded polished, but the glances in the hallway were not. Some were curious, some were skeptical, and some, particularly from Charles Whitmore's corner of the executive floor, were openly hostile. Ethan kept his head down and worked. He reviewed compliance reports, vendor contracts, internal risk assessments. Patterns began to emerge quickly. Certain high-yield partnerships had unusual penalty clauses. Several smaller firms had been quietly pressured into signing unfavorable restructuring terms. The deeper Ethan looked, the more a familiar unease settled in his chest. He had seen this before. Late Thursday afternoon, his phone buzzed. Lily's school. His stomach tightened as he stepped into an empty conference room to answer. "Mr. Carter," the school administrator said carefully, "we received an anonymous concern regarding your employment stability and home environment. We're required to document it." Ethan went still. "What kind of concern?" "A suggestion that your work situation may be volatile, that your recent career changes could impact your daughter's well-being." The words were professionally neutral. The implication was not. Ethan ended the call with controlled politeness, but his hands trembled when he lowered the phone. Volatile. He didn't need to guess where that narrative had started. That evening, as he left the building, Charles Whitmore caught up beside him. "Settling in?" Whitmore asked casually. "Yes." Whitmore adjusted his cufflinks. "Executive environments are demanding. Personal instability can complicate things." Ethan met his eyes. "My personal life is stable." Whitmore's smile was thin. "Let's hope it stays that way." The message was clear. Inside Madeline's office later that night, the skyline glittered in cold silence. "They contacted Lily's school," Ethan said, keeping his voice even. Madeline's expression hardened. Patricia Reynolds stood near the window, arms folded. "Anonymous?" Patricia asked. "Yes." Madeline exhaled slowly. "Charles is escalating." "You can't prove that," Ethan said. "I don't need proof to recognize strategy," Madeline replied. Patricia stepped forward. "Whitmore is pushing a merger with Halpern Global. Fast, aggressive, high risk. Madeline wants a full audit first." "And you're in compliance review," Madeline added. "Which means your analysis could slow or stop the deal." Ethan understood. He wasn't being attacked because he was weak. He was being pressured because he was inconvenient. "I won't falsify anything," Ethan said quietly. Madeline studied him. "That's why you're here." Patricia's tone softened slightly. "This won't stay subtle. If Whitmore can't discredit your competence, he'll question your stability. Custody, finances, past employment." Ethan thought of Lily's drawing taped to their refrigerator. "My dad works here." For the first time since getting the job, doubt flickered. "What if this costs her?" he asked. Madeline's voice lowered. "Leadership isn't about avoiding conflict. It's about deciding which conflict is worth enduring." Ethan looked between them. He had chosen integrity once before and lost nearly everything. Now it was happening again. Only this time, he wasn't alone. Outside the glass walls of the office, the city lights burned against the winter dark. Inside, lines were being drawn. And Ethan understood that helping a woman at an intersection had not simply earned him a job. It had placed him in the center of a war. The board meeting was scheduled for Monday morning. By Sunday night, Ethan had barely slept. His full audit report sat open on his laptop at the kitchen table. Lily was asleep down the hall, her nightlight casting a soft gold glow beneath her door. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the steady pulse in his ears. The numbers were clear. Halpern Global wasn't just high risk. It was structured to quietly transfer long-term liability onto Novaris while shielding certain internal stakeholders. There were side letters, deferred clauses, incentives that disproportionately benefited one executive division. Whitmore's division. Ethan closed his eyes briefly. If he softened the language in the report, the deal would pass. The pressure would stop. The anonymous concerns might disappear. If he didn't, he would become the face of obstruction. He thought of Lily again, of the way she watched him when he tied his shoes, as if even that small act carried meaning. Monday came cold and bright. The boardroom was larger than the conference room where Ethan had interviewed. Investors sat along one side, expressions measured. Madeline remained composed at the head of the table. Patricia reviewed printed summaries. Charles Whitmore looked perfectly at ease. "Mr. Carter," Madeline said evenly, "please present your findings." Ethan stood. He felt the weight of the room, the calculation behind every pair of eyes. He began calmly, walking through data points, projections, structural risks. He kept his tone neutral, professional, factual. When he reached the liability transfer clause, Whitmore interrupted. "That's speculative," he said smoothly. "Standard language." Ethan didn't look away. It becomes non-standard when combined with Appendix D and the deferred compliance adjustment in year 3. A murmur passed among the investors. Whitmore's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Ethan continued. He didn't dramatize. He didn't accuse. He simply laid out the truth. By the time he finished, the silence in the room felt heavier than before. One of the board members leaned forward. "If this analysis is accurate, approving this merger exposes us to substantial reputational damage." Patricia spoke carefully. "Our internal review confirms Mr. Carter's assessment." Whitmore's composure finally cracked. "This is risk management paranoia. We can't stall every opportunity because of theoretical exposure." Madeline's voice cut through, calm but unyielding. "This is not theoretical. It is documented." She looked directly at the board. Novaris was not built on shortcuts. "We will not begin now." The vote that followed was not unanimous, but it was decisive. The merger was suspended pending full independent review. Whitmore left the room without a word. That afternoon, Madeline called Ethan into her office. "You did the right thing," she said. "It may cost you politically," he replied. "It already has," she answered quietly. "But I'd rather lead a company that survives honestly than one that grows by erosion." Ethan nodded. When he picked Lily up from school that evening, she ran toward him, backpack bouncing. "Did you work in the tall building today?" she asked. "I did." She smiled proudly. "I told my teacher you help people." Ethan felt something settle inside him, steady, solid. He had almost driven past that intersection, almost chosen safety over compassion. Instead, he had chosen character. And this time, character had not taken everything from him. It had built something stronger. As the winter sun dipped behind the Chicago skyline, Ethan realized something simple and profound. Success and goodness were not enemies. Sometimes, the most powerful decision a person makes is the one no one expects. The moment they choose to stop. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more stories that stay with you.